Okay, my slides are also not there if I advance. No, it says end of presentation.
Don't say that.
It's all right. For time, I'm going to just start this, and maybe he'll find them as we go. I'm from a field where we write our papers, so I'm sorry I'm going to read to you, but that also means that I don't have slides and I'm going to carry on. So first I want to say how excited I am to be here and grateful for being invited so I could share an overview of our recent monograph, whose picture you see right now. But it's called Disney Parks and the Construction of American Identity, and perhaps the subtitle is deeper than a day at Disney and probably will take as long to read. So, in her article, Disney World, a plastic monument to death, from Rabelais to Disney, Ilaria Serra perfectly illustrates the European intellectual traditional views of Disney. She writes, this is where that would be, the guest's play is instead controlled by the power. His laughter is geared towards one single meaning. Oh, look, there it is. Great. His laughter is geared towards one single meaning. Thank you. There we go. The Disney meaning, a flat, simplified, and profitable world. Laughter does not spring spontaneously, and people are told when to laugh by laughing characters. This assertion is not made with evidence from observing actual crowds, but rather than critiquing the perceived messages in the attractions and assuming guests passively accept those messages. She's explicitly building off scholars like Eco and Baudrillard, whose critiques of Disney as hyperreal and a simulacrum, respectively, have become foundational for a strand of scholars who deconstruct the ideologies of the rides and assume guests naively take those experiences for reality. Undergirding this strand of argumentation is a form of intellectual elitism that posits the existence of authentic and unmediated experiences that Disney is depriving individuals of with its alluring plastic consumerism of death. However, coming from a background in theater and performance studies, we, and this is me speaking for myself and my co-author, Dr. Tom Robeson, are accustomed to considering the perspective of the audience in our work and knowing fully that audiences are not passive and collaborate to dictate the final meaning of an event. A central tenet, and you've seen a variety of this picture today, a central tenet of both theater and performance studies, two overlapping but distinct fields, is that meaning is not unilaterally constructed, that it lies between what the producer intends and what the audience receives. This is awkward in a room full of people who make things or are practitioners because we don't care about what you intend fully. The ways audiences respond to and shape performances are impacted by the cultural moment they reside in, as well as numerous other identity-based ways they perceive the world. Disney is one of the largest institutions in the United States. It is a dominant transmedia company with a massive influence on society, but it is not apart from society. The company is made up of individual artists and workers, as we well know they were on stage, who reside within the same cultural forces as the guests. And it shapes the attractions it offers in response to what it thinks the public wants. So in this book, we use performance and theater studies to examine when Disney offers guests roles to play. And earlier we heard some of the ones that were intentional, but we actually mean things like athlete, parent, or citizen, and guests' responses. Acceptance, denial, or negotiation of those roles leads to meaningful performances that are representative of what it is to be an American in the current cultural moment. These performance examples illuminate the ways that a confluence of social factors have led to such profound malaise, and the picture of the folks fighting, that even Disney's attempts at creating a utopian escape cannot successfully counter. This means that this analysis of the park, focusing on the park in the 21st century, serves as a sort of snapshot of America and Americanness in the current moment. One that we argue has both the Disney castle in the background, as well as the looming shadow of intense cultural anxiety. We did not set out to write about anxiety, it just kept coming up over and over and over again, and our book reshaped itself to that. Peter N. Stearns argues that Americans show different responses to broadly comparable fear situations than do counterparts elsewhere. Part of Stearns' central argument is that recent American fears mirror past historical societies in which fear overcame reason. Among the threads that Stearns explores are two of particular relevance to our work. One he labels controlled fear in American entertainment, specifically citing theme park attractions like roller coasters, and health and death fears, including changing patterns of disease and degeneration. Steers identified these health fears as significant in 2006, nearly a decade and a half before a global pandemic uprooted much of global life as it was commonly understood, and in turn fundamentally altered the entertainment industry as well as theme parks. In her 22 book, Anxiety in the Middle Class America, Sociology of Emotional Insecurity in Late Modernity, Nicole points out the wide variety of fears facing middle-class Americans. Those same middle-class people for whom Disney parks were originally modeled, although we've heard they might be priced out, and for whom I'm assuming many people are imagining entertainments. Nicole's list includes many of the concerns identified by Stearns, but adds other fraught identity categories around which anxieties coalesce that will thread through our book, underscoring the anxious and contentious nature of American identity in the 21st century. Perhaps most consequentially, Nicole points out that Americans also worry about rising levels of anxiety, cleverly showing the ways in which anxiety has become an ever-sustaining, even strengthening feedback loop. Historically, anxiety was defined by inaccurately assessing actual risk to focus on overblown perception of threat. But she notes in the contemporary moment, beginning in the 1990s with the rise of electronic mass media, Americans no longer have a meaningful way to compare perception to reality. The determination of risk is complex and multifaceted, and identifying real culprits is doomed to fail when the issue is systemic. The omnipresent mediated construction of reality has only accelerated with the ubiquity of the smartphone and the social media. So I'm sympathetic to the person who wants the entertainment that forces her to leave her phone in her pocket. We contend that a Disney theme park represents a popular form of immersive theater, which you have heard about a lot, so I'm going to skip most of this. But theater person Josephine Machon describes it as theater that combines the act of immersion, being submerged in an alternative medium where all the senses are engaged and manipulated, with the deep involvement in the activity within that medium. So I'm skipping ahead. So, in 2019, we published Performance in the Disney Theme Park Experience, The Tourist as Actor, an edited collection of essays. In the introduction, we established our central methodology, aligning theory from the field of tourism studies with a theory from performance studies to frame the tourist as actor within the bounds of a Disney theme park. Most central to that book argument is the notion that tourists within the immersive theatrical environment of Disney theme park contribute far more actively to the story experience than most scholars in our discipline previously asserted. We argued, taking into account the agency and reception of those present, viewing Disney as a massive form of immersive theater leads to a more nuanced understanding of how guests choose to construct a role for themselves at the parks, how this role is intersectional with their normal identity categories and yet can transcend it, and better explains why millions upon millions of people choose to do so every year. This methodology incorporates the perspectives and actions of tourists as an integral part of the investigation of what Disney parks mean in a cultural moment, and shares Clement's concern about the contested and shifting locus of control within Disney parks. So, how we did this is field work at the parks, including ethnographic and autoethnographic participation in Disney events, close readings of rides and attractions. We ended up primarily focusing on Walt Disney World in Florida. I'm in Tampa. This was very convenient, but they're also huge, and less has been written about them from our world. Observational work of Disney fan sites and message boards, historical analyses to situate text within genres and the eras they emerged from. Different performances we identified as exemplary moments of unspoken Americanness, such as coordinated family t-shirts, run Disney races, political protests, have required different expertise to properly address in as much of their totality as we could. However, as we reside as scholars at the intersection of performance studies and theater history, I'm always really excited to hear from scene designers. We also constantly consider Disney parks as a form of popular entertainment, to be contextualized and understood within theater history traditions. Music, design, costuming, lights, sound, choreography, and the narratives all arose from the same genealogy that produced traditional theater activity. Our research methodologies involve numerous field studies. We have not done surveying or interviewing with park guests within the park, that we thought we'd get in trouble. So we attended the parks multiple times, paying attention to the dramaturgies of the rides, the mise-en-scène of the park, and observing guest behavior. We've also operated as participant spectators in multiple run Disney events, allowing us autoethnographic understanding of the culture, even though this requires training for long distance runs and getting up at 3 a.m. for races. In every case, we've sought out additional guest responses about our objects of study, whether on Facebook groups or other social media, Instagram, YouTube video captures, message boards, posts to gather responses to the parks that add additional perspectives so to mitigate potential for confirmation bias. It has often been most fruitful for us to look at recent changes or evolutions in attractions and to map the reasons and the outcomes of those changes from emerging cultural trends. Though an economic explanation could account for much of the impetus to shift, we are more interested in the zeitgeist directing that capitalist impulse. The changes at the parks illuminate and reveal the cultural shifts and ideologies that underpin the attractions. So when the attraction Listen to the Land at Epcot evolves into Living with the Land, which we discussed in Chapter 3, it's interesting to see what elements of the ride are kept, what changes, how guests respond, and what all of that illustrates about contemporary attitudes toward agriculture. When a longtime beloved show is replaced, like Illumination's Reflections of Earth fireworks show, and its costly subsequent replacement flops and is quickly abandoned, that signals to us a place to investigate the aesthetic qualities of that performance, the underlying message, the guest response, and the cultural shifts that float underneath all of that. Oh, I'm doing really good. Okay. So, this is a little overview of the chapters. The Disney parks offer an endless bounty of implicit Americanness, as evidenced by the growing field of Disney studies, which is actually a whole scholarly field now, if you all didn't know. But for this project, we've chosen to focus on 5 large categories. Music, I feel like I should have changed slides a while ago. Where are we at? Yep, nope. Okay, music, geography and ecology, sports, families, and politics. Chapter 1 begins, as only makes sense, on Main Street, USA. This chapter is called Voices of Liberty, Disney Parks' Harmonious and Cacophonous Sonic Performances of American Musical Culture. It's an academic book, title's really long. We compare 2 live music groups, the Dapper Dans and the Voices of Liberty, in the context of the park's use of music, which Carissa actually really set up for me. So, we look at how the environmental background music, which is described as diegetic, generally goes unnoticed by guests, even while continuing to utilize and normalize historically complicated repertoire. More attention is devoted to live performance of music. The Dapper Dans function as streetmosphere, essentially live scenery, and their musical and performance choices are designed to blend into the nostalgic candy-colored world of Main Street. Epcot's Voices of Liberty, on the other hand, are an attraction in and of themselves, off the main tourist paths within the rotunda of the American exhibit. And their repertoire and performance choices construct a much more progressive vision of America. Chapter 2, ready for it? Labyrinths in Hyperspace, Escapist Geography and the Absent of Ecology in American Disney Parks. Considers the labyrinthine geography of Disney parks and the ways in which the spatial arrangement of the parks, thank you, situate the tourist as the protagonist of the story. We consider the way space functions, and then we take up explicitly ecology and environment-based attractions like Living with the Land, Soarin' Around the World, the Epcot Flower and Garden Festival, and finally with a deep case study of Star Wars Galaxy Edge. So I'm actually glad she's gone because that was going to be uncomfortable. We argue the evolution of the park's labyrinthine use of space, both spatial layouts of rides and of actual outer space, reinforces a growing American solipsism about their relation to the planet and its resources. Chapter 3 takes up one of the primary ways in which many Americans distract themselves from reality, sports. So this chapter is If You Can't Run Fast, Run Fabulous, the evolution of sporting at Disney and of American conceptions of athletes. It uses this chapter explores the use, framing, and storytelling around sports within Disney. From the famed I'm Going to Disney World Super Bowl ad to the 2020 COVID-necessitated NBA playoff bubble, Disney has often aligned itself with major sporting events. However, over the last couple of decades, there's been a shift from highlighting professional athletes to a more inclusive definition of athlete that has occasioned contentious debates. People are really mad online about who gets to be an athlete and who does not. So we're interested in that. Many commonly associate Disney parks with family vacations. In Chapter 4, Ohana means family, who is included in a Disney family and who is forgotten, examines the changing definitions and contestation over what makes a family. The Disney parks are a stage for anxiety about family to play out, either through shoring up their family bonds by costuming themselves in matching t-shirts, or through cultural uproar over the idea of a Disney adult. A child must, that's the picture, that's the small picture, right? You got your family and then you got your Disney adult. Childless millennial, enjoying the parks too much and too selfishly. Both kinds of performance illustrate shifting economy and the rise of a new stage of life, emerging adulthood, where the early 20s no longer include the standard expectations of adulthood, marriage, home buying, having children. The Disney adult's willingness to openly accept Disney's invitations to play in a childlike way coincides with cultural anxieties about an adult's duty to uphold shared notions of responsibility and reality. the very conception of roles that the families wearing t-shirts strive to reassert. While the majority of the chapters look at implicit political ideologies upheld or challenged by guests' use of Disney park spaces, Chapter 5, from yippies to MAGA provocateurs, politicized tourists crash the kingdom, takes up politics explicitly. In recent years, conservative commentators, politicians, and guests have accused Disney of capitulating to progressive activism. This is best seen through cries of wokeness and the ongoing feud between Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the Disney parks. These actions point to a larger cultural moment of hyperpartisanship, the largest recorded in our history, by the way, and fractured nationalism. We contrast the 1970s yippie invasion of Disneyland, a loosely left-wing counterculture demonstration in the park, with the 2020 Operation Flag Drop activities of Donald Trump supporter Dion Cheney. In this comparison, examining the dramaturgy of the political activism and the cultural response, I'm speeding up now, we can see how Disney parks can no longer serve as a neutral third space for Americans. At this moment in US culture, America no longer serves as a meaningful, imagined community. Finally, in the conclusion, we look at 4 ways that human beings respond to moments of extreme anxiety and panic: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, and how that plays out at Disney. So this includes things like the Disney crimes, brawls and altercations ending in bloodshed. Flight looks at a proposed explicitly conservative new theme park in Oklahoma, America's heartland. Freeze is when people get real upset that their rides change, things change. And then fawn is part of a larger social trend of doing things like exchanging friendship bracelets or pixie dusting, where we see individuals attempting to reconstruct social networks through the exchange of commodities to signal a pro-social orientation that once could be demonstrated through affect alone. Ha!